Okay, here we go again. Whiny, crybaby, in denial single mothers. The one group of people on the face of planet. Well, let me correct that because they're not the only ones, but it's just more of the same. Certain select groups and special interest groups always feeling that they have this. It's not even a right. It's supposedly it's by default that they are to be treated with all sorts of honor and dignity and respect, and they're supposed to be viewed as these great paragons of virtue and symbols of achievement and strength and character and independence and all this other mess. And I'm like, you know what? Time to put a dose of reality onto these things. And everybody knows my position on this whole thing about the single mother pandemic already, and I've kept it no secret. But one of the things I haven't been doing is keeping up with the rhetoric. And here lately, I've been just awash in just how delusional these single mothers are as far as putting themselves on a pedestal. Because obviously, nobody else is putting them on a pedestal because everybody else is looking at the situation realistically. And essentially coming down to the whole thing about, what are you complaining for? You chose this life for yourself. So it's really nobody else's fault but yours. It's not my fault that I was a single mother who opened her legs. Well, he had the responsibility. He didn't have to do anything. You're right, he didn't. But ultimately, who accepted and received? See, this is the point that we keep trying to make to these delusional women out there. Delusional single mothers, because typically a woman doesn't fall into this category of delusion about single motherhood until she becomes a single mother. You ever notice that? It's not until she actually gets knocked up and drops one out, then suddenly her whole concept and attitude about what single mothers are and how special they are and everything, suddenly, miraculously, they just hit this epiphany awakening of the reality of the fact that they're on this apex of super status that, oh, now I understand, now I get it. Yes, I am somebody special. Yes, I am this. And yes, it is the fault of that bum who I opened my legs to. But see, we ignore nature too much in this thing we call humanity. And this is kind of part and parcel as to why I kind of picked up on this, because on my other project, I was looking at other situations where people always like to appeal to nature as far as their excuses for doing this, that, or the other, or not doing this, that, and the other. And my attention's focused on the issue of deadbeat parents and single motherhood in the animal kingdom, and of course all those good, happy-go-lucky family values that our more instinctive cousins typically do that would not really go over so well in as the way we handle ourselves. And in so doing, I started just looking a little bit deeper into our own behavior as far as it relates to these so-called family values and how we're supposedly so much more intelligent than the rest of the animal kingdom because we're driven not by instinct but by our intellect and by our knowledge and our insight and all this. And this thing about the whole single mother route just really just started hitting me hard, because I knew there was a level of delusion out there as it relates to women who get stuck with holding a package by themselves, but I had no clue that in order to not deal with the reality of the situation, they would fabricate this mythology about themselves, about who they are and about what they can accomplish. Not to say that there aren't those who can accomplish great things and who are able to do good for their children and see them become successes in life and all that stuff. We acknowledge things like that. But typically, you have to look at the qualifiers. They're usually getting some kind of help in those situations. Remember, if it's not through some sort of like a governmental help through things like WIC, AFDC, or student loans so that the mothers can get better educated so that they can be better providers or whatever, or things of this sort where they're getting a little bit of a leg up. So they're either getting it through the government or they're getting it through financial resources of the child's father or alleged father in a lot of cases through things like child support. And so it's not like these women are just out there doing it all by themselves. They've got a little bit of a hand that's pulling them along. But even then, as I said, not a big thing. Nothing to really get upset about, because typically, let's admit, that it's tough for one person to do all the parental responsibility and guiding of the child and everything by themselves, totally by themselves. So I understand that, I get that. But to take that and to claim that, well, all these little extra things that actually helped me along, oh, they don't count, because the important thing is that I took the control. I was the primary caregiver. I raised up my child by myself and in my house, and this was our situation, and we went through it thick and thin, and my child became this great success or whatever, which usually is not the case, of course. But for those who really do like to delude themselves into believing that, hey, because you're a single parent, you've got superpowers, and so everything you touch just turns to gold. And that's when I came across this particular screed of bullshit. And this is pretty much what set me off, because not only is it delusional, but they're trying, in this particular instance, they are actually trying to lay claim to something they have absolutely no right to lay claim to. As you can tell in the additional text that I supplied in response to this whole thing. So here's this image, a two-part picture made up like one of those demotivational posters. On one side, you have an image of William Jefferson Clinton, 42nd President of the United States of America. On the other side, Barack Hussein Obama, the 44th President of the United States of America. And they also both have the dubious distinction of being considered the, quote, first black president, unquote. So I just thought I'd throw that out there just to be all silly and whatnot. But see, the point that this super single mother self-worshipping goddesses try to lather onto themselves is that they put these two pictures up there side by side, demotivational poster style, put this little blurb down there: what single mothers can produce. And if you'll excuse my language, I lost my shit. And as you yourself can read in the text that I supplied after I put the little asterisk up there to challenge this idea that both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were the products of single mothers, let's just go through it step by step so that we understand exactly how much praise and self-lathering that these single mothers really do get to claim for themselves, simply because you've had our latest two presidents up there, well, latest two Democratic presidents anyway, and with this claim hanging around their neck that they were the products of single mothers, and so as the products of single mothers, well, naturally, you know, these are the kind of successful men that single mothers can raise. So, as I stated in the text, let's review. 1. Both men were born in wedlock, the mother of the latter becoming a single mother only after deciding to separate from her husband and from the father of her child, literally taking her child thousands of miles away with her from her father. Correction, from his father. Sorry for that slip there. Number 2, both men were temporarily abandoned by their single mothers to be raised for a time by their married grandparents. Point number 3, when these men's mothers decided to become parents to their sons again, they did so in new marriages, where there was a father figure in the home who was involved in the upbringing. And the 4th point, neither one, either Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, neither one of them involved themselves with women who were like their mothers, but instead married and remained married to the same women who both carried and raised their children, children whom they never tried to pawn off on anybody else. And so as my closing statement notes, no, single mothers, you do not get to claim presidents as your crown of glory. And see, this is the slicky, tricky, slimy stuff that these agenda frauds really love to do. No matter what bandwagon that they're on, they always try to lay claim to something they know they have absolutely no right to claim for themselves. And this is like one of the most blatant examples of it. This whole idea about Bill Clinton and Barack Obama being raised by single mothers, no, they weren't. They were born to women who, for a time, became single mothers. But then the whole idea about this self-worship that these single mothers love to do to themselves, it typically is supposed to have a foundation. And that foundation is supposed to be Well, since we're single mothers and we have to raise the children by ourselves, the responsibility and all of that goes along with it falls upon our shoulders. So we have to pick up that burden. We have to carry that ball, and we have to step to and put forth the extra effort in order to make sure that we produce children who are of fine quality and yada yada. But that's not what either of these men's mothers did. They were not involved in their sons' lives through thick and thin from point A to point Z. In fact, they had mothers who shoveled them off onto their grandparents, which is something that typically happens with a lot of single mothers, especially in the African American community. It's like, oh, we're not fit to be good parents, or it's cramping our style. So, Mom, Dad, can you take little Junior JoJo here for that? And that's typically what happens. Hardly do you see single mothers that actually do it all by themselves. And when they do it by themselves, unfortunately, what we usually get are not people of presidential stock, if you ever notice. Now, would I have an issue with this if Mr. Clinton and Mr. Obama actually were the products of legitimate and true, sincere, hardworking single mothers? Of course not. I still would have seen it for what it was, which was an attempt to try to lather all sorts of praise and self-idolization and worship upon themselves, trying to get everybody else to view them the same way. It's like, look,
women don't need a man in the house. We don't need a dad. I'm both father and the mother of my...
So we see what they're trying to do there. And yeah, they could have used that as part of their little tactic. But see, if they were going to do that, then they had to carry the ball the entire distance. And the women who produced these two presidents did nothing of the kind. In fact, they were not single mothers. They were part-time mothers. And when they did decide to have some semblance of being a legitimate parent to these boys again, what was the situation? They had a man in the house. That's what they don't want to tell you. See, all they want to do is focus on a little brief snippet and a little slither of, hey, for a time, these mothers were single mothers. Yeah. It wasn't for very long before they shuffled them off onto the grandma and granddad. Now note what I said again, grandma and granddad. So again, out of one marriage situation into another marriage situation. They weren't dropped off from a single mother into the laps of another single mother. They actually went to be raised for a time with a legitimate, secure, married family. And then when they came back, they were brought back to another situation with mommy, who was again married to a man. So, how am I going to try to wrap this up? I don't know, because I made the major points already. But this is just the dishonesty and the hypocrisy that I really have with these agenda frauds. And in this case, these single mothers really need to get a clue and come back to reality. There's a reason that people frown upon your situation and they don't give you any sort of praise or worship that you think that you're due, simply because of the fact that you're not due any. Because the situation for most of you, those of you who even choose these examples, Mr. Clinton and Mr. Obama, overlook the fact that these boys were born in wedlock. They weren't the product of some hoochie mama that just ran around and clubbing and throwing herself out to the wind to every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there that was turning her eye and making her underwear moist or anything of that sort. No, these boys were conceived in wedlock. So that right there disqualifies you to claim them as the products of single mothers. And when they became single mothers, it was due to situations, in the instance of Mr. Clinton, circumstances of that nobody had any control over, Mr. Blythe dying in an automobile accident. And in the case of Barack Obama, Stanley Ann Durham just deciding that, hey, I want to further my education, and so it's more important for me to be an independent, strong woman than to be a wife and a mother. So let me pick up my boy and go off, jump across the ocean, take my son with me, keep him away from his father, and then bitch and complain about how his daddy's not in his life. No, y'all don't get to claim presidents for your crown of glory. End of line.